When you think of Marilyn Monroe, you picture a silver screen goddess who captivated the world with her beauty and charm. Clint Eastwood, on the other hand, is the embodiment of rugged masculinity, an actor and filmmaker known as much for his talent as for his legendary romances. But what happens when two of Hollywood's most notorious heartbreakers cross paths? For years, whispers of a secret encounter between Monroe and Eastwood have circulated, but the details remained a mystery. Until now, after decades of silence, Eastwood is finally pulling back the curtain on what really happened that night he met Marilyn Monroe. Monroe's heartbreaking upbringing. In the glittering chaos of 1950s Hollywood, where fame was fleeting and secrets were currency, two rising stars crossed paths. Marilyn Monroe, already a legend, and Clint Eastwood, a brooding newcomer still learning the ropes. Their meeting was brief, their night together a whispered secret, until now. But before she became Marilyn, the world's symbol of desire, she was Norma Jean Mortensen, an orphan lost in a world that never truly claimed her. Born in 1926 in Los Angeles, her story wasn't shaped by red carpets, but by the harsh realities of foster homes and heartbreak. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, was imprisoned by mental illness and spent much of her life in an institution, while her father remained a shadow, a figure she would spend her life chasing but never find. Foster homes became a revolving door of unfamiliar faces, and orphanages were no better. The adults who were supposed to protect her often became her greatest threats. Even when she was taken in by Grace Goddard, a woman who promised stability, darkness lurked behind closed doors. Grace's husband, Irwin, was no guardian, he was a predator. And once again, Norma Jean had to run. Once again, Norma Jean had no choice but to run. But in the midst of all the chaos, one thing remained constant: the movies. Sent to the theater just to keep her out of the way, she found herself mesmerized by the women on screen, their beauty, their power, their ability to command a room without saying a word. It was there that she saw a way out. In 1938, she finally found something close to a home with Grace's aunt, Anna Lower. For the first time, she felt safe, even if only for a little while. She poured herself into writing for her school's newspaper, escaping into words the same way she had escaped into films. But stability was never hers to keep. In 1942, fate intervened once again. Grace's husband was transferred to West Virginia, and legally, Norma Jean couldn't leave California with them. There were no more foster homes, no more temporary beds. The only way out? Marriage. At just 16, she became Mrs. James Dougherty, a housewife to a 21-year-old neighbor she barely knew. School was over, independence was a distant dream, and she was trapped in a marriage that felt like a life sentence. While the world saw a young girl settling into domestic bliss, inside, Norma Jean was suffocating. But this wasn't the end of her story. This was just the moment before the transformation. The last time she would ever be powerless. Because soon, she wouldn't just be watching the stars on screen. She would become one. When James Dougherty was deployed to fight in the Pacific in April 1944, Norma Jean wasn't just left behind. She was finally free. She moved in with her in-laws, but domestic life had already lost its grip on her. Then came the moment that changed everything. A job at the radio plane company, assembling drones for the war effort, seemed like just another chapter in her life, until David Conover walked in. A photographer working for the U.S. Army Air Forces, he was there to capture the beauty of the women behind the machines. But when his camera landed on Norma Jean, he saw something else. The factory walls couldn't hold her after that. By 1945, she had left the assembly lines behind, stepping into the world of modeling with a hunger that set her apart. She abandoned her old life, ignoring her faraway husband, and signed with the Blue Book Agency. She wasn't high fashion. Her curves were too generous for that. But pin-up photography? That was a different story. Through the agency, she landed a screen test with Paramount Pictures, only to fail. But rejection didn't stop her. 20th Century Fox executive Ben Lyon saw something in her, something RKO Pictures had also been eyeing. To keep her from slipping into the hands of the competition, Fox signed her to a 6-month contract. Her old life was the last thing holding her back, and in September 1946, she cut the final thread. James Dougherty, the husband who never wanted his wife in the spotlight, was no longer in the picture. Norma Jean was gone. Marilyn had arrived. Becoming Marilyn Monroe. During her first semester at Fox, Marilyn Monroe trained in singing and dancing, landing her first role in Dangerous Years, 1947. Despite her enthusiasm, Fox executives found her too timid for stardom and declined to renew her contract. Determined, Monroe returned to modeling while taking acting classes at the Actors Laboratory Theater. She took odd jobs at film studios, including working as a dancing pacer in musicals. Refusing to fade into obscurity, Monroe networked relentlessly, charming producers, befriending tabloid columnists, and attending studio events. She caught the attention of Fox executive Joseph M. Schenck, who helped secure her a contract with Columbia Pictures in 1948. Inspired by Rita Hayworth, she dyed her hair platinum blonde and trained with acting coach Natasha Lytess, who would mentor her for years. Monroe starred in Ladies of the Chorus, a low-budget musical that flopped at the box office, leading Columbia to drop her. Back to square one, Monroe returned to modeling, posing for ads and nude calendars without hesitation. Then she met Johnny Hyde, vice president of the William Morris Agency. Their relationship became both personal and professional, leading to small but memorable roles in The Asphalt Jungle, 1950, and All About Eve, 1950, which finally earned her recognition. Hyde secured her a 7-year contract with Fox, but just days later, he died of a heart attack, leaving Monroe devastated. Now under contract with Fox, Monroe played minor roles in 3 comedies in 1951. While the films weren't major hits, critics praised her as one of Hollywood's most promising new stars. Fan mail poured in by the thousands, and in 1952, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association named her the best young box office personality. That same year, she began a highly publicized romance with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. Just as her star was rising, a scandal threatened to derail her career. Fox discovered Monroe's 1949 nude photos, and, rather than suppress them, she publicly admitted she had posed for the calendar while struggling financially. Instead of damaging her image, the confession only made her more popular. Riding the wave of publicity, Monroe landed leading roles in Clash by Night, Don't Bother to Knock, and We're Not Married, proving she had more to offer than just sex appeal. Despite her success, Hollywood began typecasting her as the naive, seductive blonde. She played a ditzy secretary in Monkey Business, 1952, opposite Cary Grant, and leaned into her bombshell image with calculated publicity stunts. But behind the scenes, Monroe struggled. Her anxiety, perfectionism, and low self-esteem led to chronic tardiness, forgotten lines, and multiple takes, frustrating directors and crews. She depended heavily on acting coaches, particularly Lytess, much to the dismay of studio executives. As Monroe's fame grew, so did her struggles. Frustrated by the lack of creative control in films, she found solace in photography sessions, where she felt more in charge. To cope with stress and insomnia, she turned to alcohol and prescription drugs, a habit that would worsen in the years to come. Stereotypes: sex symbol and dumb blonde. In 1953, Marilyn Monroe starred in 3 films that solidified her status as a Hollywood icon. She played a femme fatale in the noir Niagara, where makeup artist Alan Snyder crafted her signature look: crimson lips, a beauty mark, and arched eyebrows contrasting with her platinum blonde hair. Her next film, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, became one of her most famous roles. Monroe starred alongside Jane Russell as a gold-digging showgirl, cementing the dumb blonde stereotype associated with her. Her performance, particularly in Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, was widely praised, though some, like Joan Crawford, criticized it as unworthy of a serious actress. The film's success propelled Monroe past Betty Grable as Fox's most bankable blonde star. Monroe followed this with How to Marry a Millionaire, 1953, where she played a naive model scheming to marry rich. Despite mixed reviews, it was her biggest box office hit to date and earned her a spot on the cover of Playboy's first issue. Despite her rising stardom, Monroe's contract had not been renegotiated since 1950, leaving her underpaid and with little control over her roles. Frustrated by being typecast, she refused another stereotypical role and was suspended by Fox in early 1954. To shift attention from the controversy, Monroe married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio in a highly publicized wedding. Their honeymoon in Japan doubled as a PR opportunity, with Monroe making appearances at baseball events. By March 1954, Monroe negotiated a new contract with Fox, securing a lead role in The 7-Year Itch. The film featured her in one of cinema's most iconic moments, standing over a subway grate as her white dress billowed in the wind. The image became a defining moment in pop culture and helped make the film one of the decade's biggest hits. However, the intense publicity surrounding Monroe's sex symbol status strained her marriage. DiMaggio, uncomfortable with her image, grew resentful, leading to their divorce in October 1954. Determined to take control of her career, Monroe partnered with photographer Milton Green in November 1954 to launch Marilyn Monroe Productions, MMP. Her decision to break from Fox was seen as a challenge to the Hollywood studio system, sparking a legal battle and media ridicule. Meanwhile, Monroe's production company went on to succeed. By the end of 1955, she negotiated a new contract with Fox. Gaining unprecedented control, she could choose her films, directors, and co-stars. And for every movie she completed with Fox, she could produce one with MMP. Many doubted her ability to succeed outside the industry's traditional power structures, but Monroe remained committed to reshaping her career. While Marilyn did just great for herself, Eastwood would soon follow suit. Clint Eastwood's turbulent childhood. On May 31, 1930, in San Francisco, California, a future Hollywood legend was born. But before Clint Eastwood became one of the most recognizable faces in cinema, his life was anything but enviable. Growing up during the Great Depression, Eastwood and his family bounced from town to town before finally settling in Piedmont, California in 1940. After high school, he was drafted during the Korean War, but instead of fighting overseas, he was stationed in California, a twist of fate that would keep him close to Hollywood. When he left the Army in 1953, Eastwood packed his bags and chased a dream. Hollywood wasn't welcoming at first. A screen test with Universal in 1954 landed him a 40-week contract, but after a few minor roles in Tarantula, 1955, and Revenge of the Creature, 1955, the studio dropped him. He was just another struggling actor in a town full of them. Then came his big break. In 1959, Eastwood was cast as Rowdy Yates in the hit TV Western Rawhide, 1959-65. It was his first taste of fame, but it was his next move that would turn him into a global sensation. In the mid-1960s, a young Italian director named Sergio Leone was redefining the Western genre, and he needed a rugged, mysterious lead for his next project. Enter Eastwood, who took on the role of the Man with No Name, a quiet yet deadly gunslinger whose icy stare said more than words ever could. The trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, For a Few Dollars More, 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, was a game-changer. These spaghetti westerns were unlike anything Hollywood had seen, and by the time they hit U.S. theaters in 1967, Eastwood was a bona fide box office star. Determined to take control of his career, he launched his own production company, Malpaso, in 1968, and made his first American Western, Hang 'em High. He also formed a strong creative bond with director Don Siegel, who became his mentor. Together, they made some of the most gripping films of the era, including Coogan's Bluff, 1968, Two Mules for Sister Sarah, 1970, The Beguiled, 1971, and Escape from Alcatraz, 1979. But it was Dirty Harry, 1971, that cemented Eastwood's place in Hollywood history. Playing the tough, no-nonsense detective Harry Callahan, Eastwood delivered one of cinema's most legendary lines, "Go ahead, make my day." The film's success spawned 4 sequels and made Dirty Harry a cultural phenomenon. By the early 1970s, Clint Eastwood had already cemented himself as a Hollywood tough guy. But he wasn't content with just being an action star. He wanted to shape the stories himself. In 1971, he took his first leap into directing with Play Misty for Me, a psychological thriller that proved he was just as skilled behind the camera as he was in front of it. Eastwood then turned to the genre that made him famous, the Western. High Plains Drifter, 1972, saw him play a mysterious stranger in a town with a dark secret, while The Outlaw, Josie Wales, 1976, added depth to his usual gunslinger persona. This film, originally directed by Philip Kaufman, became one of Eastwood's most emotionally rich westerns, telling the story of a Missouri farmer seeking revenge after his family is massacred. With breathtaking cinematography and a standout performance by Chief Dan George, it gave audiences a more human side of Eastwood's legendary Avenger. Not one to be boxed into a single genre, Eastwood experimented with different styles. The Gauntlet, 1977, was a fast-paced action thriller. Bronco Billy, 1980, was a light-hearted love story set in a Wild West circus. And Firefox, 1982, saw him play a fighter pilot stealing a Soviet jet at the height of the Cold War. Meanwhile, Honky Tonk Man, 1982, took him back to the Great Depression, playing a country singer battling tuberculosis while chasing his dream of performing at the Grand Ole Opry. But just when people thought he had softened, Eastwood returned to his roots with Sudden Impact, 1983, the 4th Dirty Harry movie. This time, he directed as well as starred, bringing a darker, more vengeful edge to the series. He followed it up with Pale Rider, 1985, a quasi-religious Western that showcased his signature stoic presence against the backdrop of stunning cinematography. It was one of the few Westerns of the 1980s that managed to be a box office hit. Eastwood kept pushing boundaries. In Heartbreak Ridge, 1986, he played a grizzled Marine sergeant, training a new generation of soldiers for the invasion of Grenada. Then, in White Hunter, Black Heart, 1990, he took on one of his boldest roles, playing a fictionalized version of legendary director John Huston, capturing his rugged and eccentric persona during the making of The African Queen, 1951. Beyond action films and westerns, Eastwood had another passion: jazz. In 1988, he directed Bird, a critically acclaimed biopic about saxophone legend Charlie Parker, starring Forrest Whitaker. That same year, he also produced Thelonious Monk, Straight, No Chaser, a documentary celebrating the jazz icon. And if that wasn't enough, Eastwood also made headlines outside of Hollywood. In 1986, he ran for mayor of Carmel, California, and won. For 2 years, he brought the same no-nonsense attitude to politics as he did to his films, proving that his influence stretched far beyond the silver screen. The first meeting. It's hard to believe that Clint Eastwood and Marilyn Monroe were born less than 4 years apart. One is the ultimate symbol of rugged masculinity. The other, the unreasonable eye candy. Though they might feel like icons from entirely different eras, in reality, their paths almost crossed in a way that could have literally changed the course of Hollywood history. Of course, the biggest reason it seems like they belong to different worlds is simple. Monroe was already gone before Eastwood became a movie star. When she tragically passed in 1962, Eastwood was still just the cowboy from Rawhide, a rising actor yet to find his defining role. They never moved in the same social circles, never shared the same level of fame. Monroe was a Hollywood goddess. Eastwood, at the time, was barely making his mark. Then, just a few years after Monroe's death, fate propelled Eastwood into stardom. Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy transformed him into an international sensation, and he never looked back. He went on to craft one of the most legendary careers in film history, dominating both in front of and behind the camera. But despite all his success, there was always one missed opportunity he carried with him: a chance to act alongside Marilyn Monroe. It happened long before he was a household name, when he was just another fresh-faced hopeful looking for his break. In 1956, Eastwood was in the running for a part in Bus Stop, the romantic dramedy that became a career-defining role for Monroe. The film allowed her to escape Hollywood's dumb blonde stereotype and prove her dramatic chops. Naturally, Eastwood, then struggling for recognition, was eager to be part of it. "I was up for a part in Bus Stop as a young guy," he revealed in an interview with Parade. "I was kind of excited because she was so attractive, and I thought, this could be okay." And of course, it didn't become okay because Josh cast some other guy in New York. Like, you're ready to hit the ball out of the park, and then nothing. The role he missed out on? It might have been the male lead, Beauregard Decker, the young cowboy who falls for Monroe's character, Cherie. That part ultimately went to Don Murray, a then unknown actor just a year older than Eastwood. It was Murray's big break, and for Eastwood, just another moment of almost. Looking back, it's impossible not to wonder, what if Eastwood had landed the role? What if he and Monroe had shared the screen at the height of her fame? Would it have launched him into superstardom years earlier? Would it have reshaped his career or even hers? We'll never know, but one thing's for sure. Eastwood did just fine in the long run. He became a 4-time Academy Award winner, a box office legend, and one of Hollywood's most enduring figures. Still, the idea of these two icons sharing a moment on screen remains one of cinema's great what-ifs, a lost chapter in the history of Hollywood's golden age. Is Eastwood secretly obsessed with Marilyn Monroe? Clint Eastwood is the embodiment of tough guy cool, gravel-voiced, steely-eyed, a man who could make a threat sound like a bedtime story. Marilyn Monroe, on the other hand, was Hollywood's ultimate blonde bombshell. Breathy, flirtatious, with a voice that melted like butter on a hot sidewalk. So, where did the rumors start that Eastwood stole his whispering drawl from Monroe? Some claim the young Clint listened to recordings of Marilyn, fascinated by the way her voice wrapped around words like silk. The idea? That he took that softness and refashioned it into something dangerous. Less bedroom, more back alley. Eastwood has shut down the theory, making it clear he never copied Monroe. But the weirdest part? He didn't need to. Despite coming from different Hollywood universes, Eastwood and Monroe had a lot more in common than anyone would think. Both were underestimated, brushed off as eye candy. Eastwood, the pretty boy cowboy; Monroe, the curvy blonde, who made men forget what they were saying. Nobody expected them to have anything to say. And yet, Monroe's comedies weren't just about batting lashes. She had razor-sharp comedic timing, slipping in humor with the precision of a bank heist. Eastwood's westerns weren't just about high noon and tumbleweeds. They smuggled in grit, violence, and an unshakable sense of justice. The difference? Monroe never lived to see the industry take her seriously. She was gone at 36, her talent only fully acknowledged when it was too late. Eastwood, on the other hand, bulldozed his way to respect. By the time Unforgiven, 1992, landed him Oscars for Best Picture and Best Director, the Hollywood elite had no choice but to admit this cowboy wasn't just playing pretend. And when $1 Million Baby, 2004, hit, any lingering doubts got knocked flat on the mat. Monroe was magic. Eastwood was a force. And even though The Whispering Thing was a myth, the truth is even better. They both rewrote the rules of what Hollywood thought a star should be. But one affair, in particular, left Monroe with a hidden tragedy. An affair that resulted in a pregnancy, the child she never had, and ultimately, a miscarriage that was quietly taken away. The affair that led to a miscarriage. She was entangled with some of the biggest names in the world, from President John F. Kennedy to his brother Robert, from Frank Sinatra to Marlon Brando. But while most of her dalliances became whispered secrets and tabloid fodder, one affair left behind a hidden tragedy. A pregnancy that could have given Monroe the child she never had until it was quietly taken away. By the time Some Like It Hot hit theaters in 1959, Marilyn was at her peak. Every camera adored her, every man wanted her, and every headline chased her. But what the world didn't know was that she was carrying the child of French film icon, Yves Montand. The two had been starring together in Let's Make Love, 1960, a film that fizzled on screen but exploded off it. The chemistry was undeniable. Montand was married to Italian screen legend Simone Signoret, but that did little to stop him from getting tangled up in Marilyn's world. As their affair burned hotter, Marilyn became pregnant. For a woman who had suffered multiple miscarriages and longed for a child, this should have been a moment of joy. But there was one problem. Her then-husband, the celebrated playwright Arthur Miller. Monroe began a romance with playwright Arthur Miller. However, due to Miller's alleged communist ties, the relationship was mostly discouraged. Over time, the fire in their marriage fizzled out. Their marriage was already in shambles when Marilyn started her affair with Montand. The marriage had become riddled with resentment and Monroe's spiraling mental health. And when Miller found out about the affair, things took an even darker turn. Montand, for his part, returned to Signoret, his reputation barely dented. Marilyn, however, unraveled further, her personal struggles growing heavier as she sought comfort in pills, fame, and the arms of men who could never truly save her. It was one of Hollywood's most tragic what-ifs. What if Marilyn had carried that child to term? Would she have finally found the stability she craved, or was she always destined to be America's most beautiful, most broken dream? By the time Some Like It Hot hit screens in 1959, Marilyn Monroe was already a Hollywood legend. But behind the scenes, the blonde bombshell found herself tangled in a passionate affair that would change everything. She reunited with Tony Curtis on set, reigniting a flame that had burned between them a decade earlier. Though both were married, Tony to Janet Leigh, pregnant with their daughter, and Marilyn to Arthur Miller, the chemistry between them was undeniable. What followed was an affair hidden from the public eye, one that culminated in Marilyn's shocking confession to Tony. She was pregnant with his child. In his 1993 memoir, Tony described the moment with haunting clarity. "I was stunned. I just stood there. The room was so silent that I could hear tires screeching on Santa Monica Boulevard." As the weight of the revelation settled, Tony turned to Arthur for guidance. Arthur's response was cold. "Finish the film and stay out of our lives." Tony, still reeling, walked away from Marilyn, leaving her crying behind him. The affair ended, but the fallout wasn't over. Soon, filming wrapped on Some Like It Hot, and Tony learned that Marilyn had suffered a miscarriage. The child, a symbol of their forbidden love, was lost, and with it, part of the passion that once bound them. The details remain murky, but what's known is that Monroe never gave birth to Montan's child. Some speculate she suffered yet another heartbreaking miscarriage, while others whisper about a quiet termination, perhaps pressured by those around her who saw a scandal too big to contain. Either way, by the time the affair ended, there was no baby, just another devastating chapter in Monroe's tragic life. Just 3 years later, Marilyn's life would come to a tragic end. On August 5, 1962, she was found dead at 36. Her death ruled an overdose, with a lethal dose of pills in her system. The mystery of her death lingers, leaving unanswered questions that continue to haunt Hollywood. Tony's words in his memoir remain poignant. "What I experienced with her was unforgettable." That unforgettable affair left a mark on Hollywood history, a chapter defined by heartbreak, scandal, and the loss of what could have been. What do you think of Marilyn Monroe's enduring legacy? Do you still watch her films? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more Hollywood secrets. You won't want to miss what's coming next.